Axel, tell us about your business and what's limiting its growth right now.
So the business is basically helping people develop, on the one hand, their own investing company, and on the other hand, a passive income portfolio with the main focus on residential real estate.
And what's limiting its growth right now?
I would say right now it's mainly because most of the work that we're doing or I'm doing is one-on-one. So somebody signs up for the mentoring program and we're basically working one-on-one together to set up the business and then learn how to do the investing. And that is very hard to scale.
Yeah, that's a common problem. Before we deep dive into how you're thinking about solving these constraints, let's first define the goal. So tell us what the last year revenue was and what you're trying to hit in the next 3 years.
Okay, so last year was about 250, and in 3 years, I would probably like to get to about 400 or more.
Okay, so we're trying to 2x, more or less.
Yeah, more or less, yeah.
It's essentially like a coaching, right? You're providing coaching services to customers?
I call it mentoring, but it's very similar to coaching, yes.
Okay, so it is a mentoring service that you're providing. And you said you have two sort of broad categories. First one is investing, like setting up the investing, like how do you buy and sell single family homes? And the second one is like creating a portfolio, like passive income, like I'm guessing rental portfolio. Is that accurate?
Well, yeah, although I would describe it slightly different. The first step, if it doesn't exist already, which is most of the time the case, is to build or to form an LLC, form a business account, form like a brokerage account, all these kind of things that you need if you were to start a business, but with the purpose of using it for investing. And then the second part or second step, which is if you look at the 12-month program, it's like maybe 6 weeks for the first part. And then the whole rest is the mentoring on what are all the things that I need to do and need to learn and need to become familiar with so that at the end of the year, I can keep going and keep adding properties to my portfolio, ideally without making mistakes.
It's not a flip, right? It's more of a buy and hold strategy.
Right, exactly. The target audience, if you want to call it that, is somebody who wants to have passive income and potentially, depending on age, retire. I always say as soon as possible. So that's kind of the goal. And that is oftentimes a matter of how many properties do I actually need to acquire to get there from the cash flow, right? And that depends, like some people already have certain things in place and they want to add real estate to it. And some people are basically just starting out to say, hey, I think real estate is the good thing that I want to get into and maybe later diversify into other things. So when I speak about portfolio, it's first and foremost real estate, but there are also diversification options that we speak about depending on how advanced or not so advanced the client already is.
It's similar. Okay, so it's similar to what we do. Like we buy and sell vacant land, but the goal essentially is to sell them on owner financing. So we get like, monthly income coming in, although it's not as passive as, income coming in from like rent of a single family, which is more stable. And then do you also like do refinance, like you teach those strategy and pull the equity out and then buy more, that kind of thing?
Yeah, for that, for equity is one option. Yes, the answer is yes. The other option is also for changes in the interest rate environment. Right now, if somebody buys, they probably have to pay between 7.5% and 8%. And who knows? But the goal would be, or the hope would be, that interest rates at some point in those 20 years or however long somebody has financed it, let's say it goes down to 5%. Obviously, you would refinance not just for the equity, but also just to have more cash flow.
Right. Okay. So someone comes to you, they're like, well, I need help with, creating this passive income portfolio with residential real estate. Now, is this just single family houses or is this also multifamily and like other types of asset classes?
Well, I always struggle a little bit with the term because everybody understands something different. So my answer is it's single family, duplex, triplex, or fourplex. Nothing bigger than that, because beyond that, the rules exchange. The other diversification opportunities are outside of real estate. For me, this is asset diversification, right? Now, we don't need to touch into this, but so people, we have clients who like duplexes and fourplexes, and then we go after those. The main common denominator is that we are always working together with turnkey provider. And the
Always
reason for
working
that...
with the... Yeah, please. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah,
Why
the
is that?
reason for working with a turnkey provider is the passive, how passive we can make it. A turnkey provider, if you don't mind, Abi, just to explain it real quick, is a company that has 3 divisions within one company under the same roof. Division number 1 is construction department or division. Number 2 is basically what you would call a real estate agency, and number 3 is property management, all under one roof. And that for us as investors means the relationship we have with them is to make sure that they build the property or renovated the property well, sell it to us at a good price that basically pencils out, and then manages it for us at a fair rate. And the importance I cannot overstress is that all 3 pieces need to be under the same roof, because there are obviously dependencies. If they are not, if we were working with flippers or with construction companies or stuff, whenever you finish the deal, it's done, it's finished, and everything else is separate. In this case, with a turnkey provider, the real distinction is if their construction division doesn't work very well and doesn't produce good quality, the property management division is constantly complaining. And I, as the owner, will say, hey guys, I'm sure you're proud of the quality of construction that you're delivering, so it's not my fault, it's not the tenant's fault, you deal with it. They know obviously all of that. And so there is an inherent incentive to say good quality construction means very little property management.
So I'm guessing you have existing relationships with turnkey providers like these?
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the big kind of like unquantified benefits of any client coming to us. It's not just that we have the sessions and I try to teach them and help them and mentor them, but it's also that they get access to turnkey providers, to lenders, to insurance companies, and all the relationships. Remember, when we first met, Abi, we talked a little bit about I did this all originally just for myself and my family. I had not really intended to turn this into a business. It only became a business because more and more people said, hey, this looks like it's actually working pretty well. Can I do this too? Right? And so that's how it became a business. My original intention was just to become financially independent for myself.
And are these properties, in one location in the US, or they're all over?
They are generally all over, but there are 2 distinctions that I would say to that. Number 1 is all our properties, both my own as well as the ones for the clients, are in locations that are performing. I used to say in locations that allow the 1% rule to apply, but that has gotten a little tricky. But performance still means we don't buy anything that is not cash flow positive on day one, right? So that's the one thing. And as far as the other variable is, if you want to have as little time effort to manage this portfolio and manage this whole thing, I always recommend to build clusters. And a cluster is anything between 4 and 6 properties. So like for my own personal performance portfolio, I have a cluster in Idaho and I have a cluster in Ohio, and I'm now working on a cluster in Alabama, right? So cluster also means you basically have more than one property with the same turnkey provider, which also makes it on the one hand more efficient, and it makes them have an incentive to keep you happy because they want to sell the second and the third and the fourth and the fifth property to you.
That's an interesting concept. I haven't personally, heard this before. To only work with turnkey providers. So you mentioned Idaho, Ohio, and Alabama. I'm guessing the reason you picked these states was because you can buy houses for or duplexes for like relatively cheap compared to states like California and New York.
In a way, I would say it's slightly different. I would say what we looked at, or what I looked at, and now together with our clients, is where is the ratio between purchase price and rent level in a good ratio, right? Like if I can buy a $200,000 property and make $1,800, $1,900 rent, that's a good ratio. If I try something similar, like where I live in San Diego, I get a $700,000 house. It's basically the same house, but I have no chance to get $6,000 rent, not even close. I would be lucky if I get 3,500. So obviously, with that much lower rent to purchase ratio, you're not going to be cash flow positive.
And you mentioned earlier your rule is it needs to be cash flow positive from day one.
Yeah, at least a little bit, even if it's just $50.
Is it getting harder and harder to find?
Well, one of the big variables that has made it harder is interest rates, right? Like when we first started, and when I actually first started, my first properties were in the 5% range. The lowest interest rate that I have in my portfolio is 3.85. And you have to keep in mind this for an investment property, right? Nowadays, completely ridiculous. That would mean the general treasury interest rate would be to like 1.7 or so. I don't know if those times will ever come back, but now, like I said, with the regular mortgage rates, you're at about 6.5. And typically for investment properties, you have to add 1 to 1.5 points. So you're really at 7.5 to 8%. And that means the interest portion of the mortgage payment is kind of double, roundabout, right? Even though your principal might remain the same. The other thing that has also happened, and that doesn't matter where across the country, if you look at the price development across the United States between, let's say, 2018 and 2025, there was this real jump after COVID, and that was everywhere. Right. So that also means really, you would have to have a severe depression for real estate prices to really significantly come down. So I bought properties in Idaho for $80,000 and $90,000, and that same property is now $150,000 or so. And it's not really because it doubled in value in some real sense. It's just because it's kind of like boats on a lake, right? If the water rises, all the boats rise.
Yeah. How much down payment are you usually putting on these properties?
Anything single family, we can do 20%, and anything like duplex, triplex, fourplex is 25%.
And the goal is, when you're getting a loan, is this like through big banks, or do you have like special lenders that you work with?
Well, it can be big banks, it can be FHA, it can be like the traditional Freddie, Fannie, it can be what's called all-in-one loans. One thing that has become more prevalent in the last, I would say, 2 years, it's what's called DSCR loans. These loans, maybe for the audience to understand, normally when you get a loan for real estate, even if you buy it through a company, the qualification is mainly on you as a person with your credit score, with your income, and all those kinds of things. DSCR is different because there the lender is looking at the performance of the property. So let's say we get a $200,000 property and the mortgage payment would be $1,150, right? They look and say, okay, can you get at least $1,300 rent on a regular basis without stretching? That would make the ratio of the payment to the mortgage to the rent that you're making something like 1.1 to 1 or 1.2 to 1. And that is the determining criteria to say, are we giving you the money or not? The other thing in DSCR is it's more common that they want either 25 or 30% down. It is allowing basically more kind of private type money to come into the market, or has allowed that. And the other aspect is obviously the performance of the property as the foundational variable allows an investor to build a bigger portfolio. Because if you think about it, when a bank looks at you, and like if they look at me right now, if I were to buy and try to buy with a regular mortgage, and they looked at me, I have a great credit score, but they also say, well, you have basically 10 mortgages to your name. They would say that it's not the case, but like if I had them all gotten traditionally, right? I had 10 mortgages. Obviously, everybody would say, well, if some of these don't get rent, you would have to come out of pocket to pay for all of that. On top of us giving you another 11th mortgage. But if everything is DSCR, then it doesn't matter what my score is or which mortgages or have or don't have or so forth, because it's purely based on the performance of the asset.
What does it stand for, DSCR?
I would have to look it up.
So who's giving this loan?
There are organizations that specialize in DSCR loans.
Oh, so it's not traditional banking. It's like is it alternative lending?
I wouldn't necessarily call it alternative, because that always sounds like, a little bit on the. So I looked it up. It's debt service coverage ratio. Debt service coverage ratio. And like I said, the point is, how are you actually able to pay the loan or the mortgage?
Yeah. And so who's the person underwriting this?
Well, these are lending organizations that have specialized in that particular product. So they take, for example, hedge fund money, like $100 million in hedge fund money, and make mortgages out of it.
I see. So how are they making money? They just lend at a higher percentage?
Slightly, yeah. Typically, they're a quarter to 0.5% higher than a FHA loan or so.
I see. So have you used this kind of loans in the past for yourself?
Yes, yeah, and my clients are using it right now, because oftentimes, and I don't know if you're aware of that with your business, but banks have gotten much, much more strict in approving loans, right? Because they have changed the criteria after COVID, especially, and after 2021, even more so because of the big run-up. So now it's much, much harder to get a regular mortgage, whereas the DSCR people, they are still doing their due diligence and everything, but they really focus on the asset and not on the person.
So it's the idea is, if for whatever reason the person is not able to rent or defaults, they can always take the asset back, and they already know that it's a performing asset, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you have to obviously show, and they run an evaluation if what you claim the rent, if it's not already rented, what you claim the rent could be is realistic. What they really like, which is different than a normal like bank lender, is that you basically offer the deal to them for a property that already has a lease agreement attached to it. And then the other part, and I think this is good advice for anybody who is in this space, in like long-term passive income investing, is what are your criteria to actually give somebody the lease? Which in my case, obviously, since we're working with turnkey providers who have a professional property management arm as one of their 3 divisions, they have all the rules and all the software and all the criteria and all this checking stuff and background check and social check and banking check and employment check, all that stuff in place. So when the DSCR lender says, well, what do you do to vet your tenant? They just rattle down the whole list.
So it seems like the secret sauce of your model is working with good turnkey providers, right? Because once you find them, then they kind of like manage everything, and you make the difference, right? So the question is, if you're going to a brand new state or a brand new area within that state, how are you finding these turnkey providers?
Well, one thing is you can literally start out with just Googling them. Then you go and look at all the comments that you can find. One great place to, if you want to have a large database to check in with people who do this kind of investing, is Bigger Pockets. Then you can go into, and I have to say, not just because I have my own podcast, but also because I've been doing it for a long time, I have great relationships to other people in real estate investing, especially residential. And I just contact them and say, hey, I heard in your state there is, let's say, Abi's turnkey company. What can you tell me? Have you heard anything? Even if they don't work with somebody directly, they typically know if it's really in their state, what kind of reputation certain companies have. And then, like I said, bigger pockets, Google comments, Reddit, all these kind of things that you can do just upfront before you ever really get in touch. And then if I were to consider somebody, then I basically interview them. Right? And since I have that many years of experience of knowing what works and what doesn't work, I basically ask them to tell me, okay, tell me exactly how you operate in construction. Tell me exactly how you operate in your real estate kind of buy and sales business. Tell me exactly how your property management works. And with experience, I guess you would say the same for buying land. Within, I would say I give myself at no more than 15 minutes if they're for real or not.
Right.
So that's just, I ask them obviously the things that I've seen organizations struggle with and find out what they say, how they handle it. And if, let's just say, everything sounds good, right, then I let them send me the property management agreement, the sales contract agreement, some examples, some names of people who have bought from them, and literally go through the regular due diligence that you would. One thing as a principle, maybe also for the audience, if that were the case, that I really were to say I want to start a new cluster, I would always be the first to work with somebody. I don't recommend anybody until I have a little bit of experience for myself.
Yeah, I think that's smart, right? Because then you don't want like a student to have a bad experience going there like green, right?
Right. And it's not just that if you use the term student, it's also that obviously quite a bit of our business is depending on referrals, right? And I don't want to not just have a student or a mentoring client have a bad experience, but they are potentially a source of future income that I also would like, to groom from the get-go. But it's also, why would you do it, right? Like there is really no reason to it. And I would say it's important for somebody listening to us to realize when you're building something like this, that patience is really an important component, right? If I get the impression that a turnkey provider gets pushy, that might already disqualify them, even if everything else is, at least on first glance, fine. Right?
What is that? Give us an example when you said they get pushy.
Let's say I interviewed them, and then at the end of the interview, everything sounded good. And I asked them, do me a favor and send me whatever is your best deal that you would offer to me if I wanted to buy a property from you right now. Right? And then they sent me something that typically works well. And then every 2 or 3 days, they ask me if I'm going to buy it and when am I going to buy it and do I have my financing and have I already filled out the form and that kind of stuff. Right? If I say to somebody, I'm going to evaluate it and let you know when I'm ready, or if I want it, or if I want something else, that should be enough.
Yeah. So when you say pushy, you're essentially saying they're like too aggressive in their sales.
Yes, in a way, I think what I'm saying is their focus is on making money and not on serving.
Ah, I see. Yeah. So you kind of like when you start a relationship, you're looking for these signs because essentially you want to be in a relationship with a turnkey company for like forever, right? Ideally. So you want to make sure that there are no red flags. Now, these turnkey companies, so help me understand this. So they already have property that they're managing, or is this the property that they just like a brand new build that they just constructed and they're selling it? So tell me how their business model works.
Yeah, so if I look at the ones that I'm working with right now and our clients are working with, they have anywhere from 250 to 1,300 properties under management. Now, that didn't just fall out of the sky, but most of them either started originally as purely a construction company or purely a property management company. And if you start at the property management side, it's kind of obvious that you start realizing, okay, we have to do certain repairs and stuff like that because the building quality isn't good. So then they get contractors and handymen and stuff, and ultimately they realize the real solution is we find a property that is a good deal from a renovation perspective and fix it ourselves. So then from that original property management perspective, they become turnkey provider because buying and selling is kind of automatic. They don't want to outsource that because of the real estate fees. Like I don't pay any, they don't want to pay any. So they have that kind of easily attached, but the construction piece is missing. Or they come from the other side. They're basically developers, and either for new construction or for renovated properties. But they realize that if they give it to third-party property management, it always creates problems, especially because the owner is always unhappy. When they buy something, then the tenant gets in, and 3-4 months later, the tenants have all these complaints. And property management keeps saying, yeah, no, it's not our deal. It's not our property. We had nothing to do. We're just managing it. So these areas of friction is basically how turnkey providers emerge. And then they have to, in my experience, make a conscious decision. Are they building new inventory, or are they just finding inventory in the community and renovate it? And like our Alabama provider, turnkey provider, they do both. So for their own internal growth, they basically identify land and then start constructing with their construction division. They start constructing new houses. Now, if you think about it, the construction business is basically money maker through the sale, through the real estate agency, and the property management business is making money through property management, and the real estate part in the middle is oftentimes making money in addition to the inventory that they create themselves, because clients want to either buy or sell. Now, buying would be normal, but selling, I've seen it quite a few times in my Idaho case, that clients of the turnkey provider decided they want to sell their portfolio and move somewhere and build a mansion, just as an example. Right. So suddenly the turnkey provider's real estate arm comes and says to all their clients, all their owners, hey, here is a client of ours who has a portfolio of 5 properties he or she wants to sell. And again, they're making money from that, even though they, didn't have to actually go through, but they can obviously make the deal much cleaner because they have previously managed. They know exactly everything in and out about those properties. For the buyer, especially when you're inside the community, it's easy because all that happens is, yes, you're buying them from them, but the management, the tenants don't even feel any different. The tenants get a one-page thing to say, we're still managing it, rent works the same, everything works the same, the only thing is the name of the owner has changed. So every division of the business is basically a profit center.
Yeah. No, it seems, the way you described it, I want to be a turnkey provider because you're making money on every single step of the workflow, right?
Yes, the thing is, like, if you were a brand new turnkey provider and I came to you, I would probably be hesitant to work with you. I mean, I know you now, and I know that you're a great person, but fundamentally, somebody who just started, and that's really what makes it hard, is when you're just very early on and you're starting. How do you actually build a good reputation and build the business up to, like, it's almost like a critical mass? That's why typically they start as either construction company or property management company, because focusing on one of those and building a portfolio and then expanding it into a turnkey provider appears to be easier than just trying to do it all 3 things all at once.
Yeah. So essentially, they sell the property, right? You buy it, but they're still managing it, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
I'm guessing they are not cheap, right? Because they're providing a premium service, and they know that since they have been managing it for a while, they already know the ropes, so it'll be cheaper for you to continue working with them. So are they charging a premium for that service?
No. The fee for property management is the same 8 to 10% as everybody else. One thing that is sometimes forgotten, Abi, what makes property management successful versus unsuccessful, in my opinion, and I think this is, if you really think about it, pretty logical. If the quality of the asset is good and the quality of the tenant is good, you're basically just collecting, let's say, 9% of the rent times 1,000 properties every month without very much doing. If the asset quality is low, you constantly have a whole handyman team go out and do fixing and organize them, and you need a whole team to manage all of that, and that's eating into your revenue, right? And if you're selecting bad tenants that constantly turn over, constantly call, constantly have some damage, constantly are complaining, you have a lot of administrative work on that end. So that's also why this trilogy is so important, because if you control the quality of the asset, then as property management, the only other thing you really need to be very careful and clean and diligent is the quality of the tenant. If you do both of those things well, it's almost like no losses, right? Like out of the 9%, I would say 7 would probably stay in your pocket.
Yeah. So quality of the asset and quality of the tenant.
Yes.
Now, who's screening for tenants? Is it you or the property management company?
No, everything is I do nothing. I just check. See, this is when we started our conversation, I said the very first thing is to set up the business, right? What I'm teaching my clients there is, as the king of your Empire LLC, the Abi Empire LLC, what you need to learn is that you are really the king or the CEO or the president, whatever title you're giving yourself, and act like it. These people are all working for you. Yes, they're not officially employees, but they should basically have the role of an employee. Property management is employed by you for 9 or 10% of the rent. And you're checking once a month that they perform. And if they don't, then you either have corrective action or you have to find somebody else. Right? But that's the role that we have. We are not there to clean toilets, go after tenants, collect rent, fix stuff, or any of that.
Is it when you so it's 100% hands free? I mean, I'm guessing you still have to make decisions. Like if say something needs repair, they'll still call you, Axel, should I do this, or do you want to get another quote, or are you approving this? Like if it's like say a $15,000 HVAC repair thing that needs to happen. What? Right. So how do you handle that? Like is this still a decision that you have to make, right?
Yes, the way you handle that is you have a property management agreement that has a minimum or a minimum trigger amount. Like in most agreements that I have and what my clients are signing, the minimum trigger is $250. So anything up to $250, the property management company can basically identify, find a reasonable solution. Ideally, this is the other aspect, right? A good property management company of a turnkey provider has kind of what I call a handyman crew. They don't like me calling that, but that's basically what you're looking for. A number of people that work as employees for the turnkey provider. So if a tenant calls and says, hey, this faucet is dripping or there's a squeaky tile or something, they just go out, look at it, fix it, make it affordable. Like the Idaho place, they charge $60 an hour, no matter what, or $60 a visit, or not, like, so it's not an insane like appearance fee or anything like that. But to your example with the $15,000 HVAC system, that would be obviously way above the $250 trigger amount. So they would get in touch, and the question is always the urgency, right? Like if you have 30 or 93 degrees outside and the HVAC is going broke, they try every which way to get in touch with me to say, okay, we need to do this and so forth. And still they know, see, this is a matter of what does it mean to be the CEO of your LLC, is you have to basically teach them as their boss, and I use this language deliberately, what you're looking for. So to contact me and not having already checked in with Lowe's and Home Depot or wherever they get their HVAC would be silly, right? Because my first thing would be, okay, have you already emailed me the quotes? Right. So normally the way is they email me something and then they call me shortly after they sent the email and say, can you look in your email? I sent you 3 quotes. Which one do you want to go with? And then I pick the one that I want to go with. Now, if it's not such an urgent thing, there might also be things where I ask them, okay, is there an interim fix? Do we really need to do it? Does it need to be brand new? Is there, some solution to it, especially when it's a significant amount of money? Keeping in mind their crew, the people that they send out there, and not forgetting, right, they have a construction department. So if anything major comes up, their construction department would know probably as well as any, what does it really take to fix it? Right, like let's say on a roof, right, there is a leak in a roof. Do we really need to get a new roof? Can we patch it? Can we replace it? If they say it needs to be new, which kind do we want? That kind of stuff, right? That's part of their business.
Yeah. How much money do you usually set aside for emergencies like this?
3 roofs.
3 roofs?
Yeah. So basically, this is something that I learned very early on. I asked the same question to a mentor of mine. I said, well, so how do I know how much reserve I should have? And he said, well, the most expensive thing in a single family home is typically the roof. That goes for about $8,000 if you have to replace it. So you want to kind of have 3 roofs worth of money sitting in a like high yield savings account or something like that as your reserve. This is also important, just real quick as a quick side note. If you think about it, I recommend and teach my clients that you want to put 5% for vacancy, 5% for capex investments, and 5% for maintenance aside every time you buy a property until you get to this kind of 3 roofs equivalent, 25,000. Then you don't need to keep doing this as your portfolio grows. You rather use that money and reinvest it into more and more properties. So I call that the pivot point. Up to that point, you keep feeding your reserve, and when you reach it, then you only replenish it if there is like a $15,000 HVAC.
So when you have, say you have 11 properties in the portfolio, so you're not going to do 3 roofs times 11, obviously, right?
No, 3 roofs total. So 25,000 basically in reserve.
So what happens if two for whatever reason 2 houses need roof or like multiple repairs at the same time and it exceeds the reserve? Yeah. Does it happen?
Yeah, luckily not too often, but let's just say there is a storm front that goes through and one hits a house in Idaho and another one hits a house in Ohio, then it's 2 roofs, 16,000, gets paid, gets done, and then I have to basically put the money from the rent into the reserve again until it's replenished.
Yeah. Okay. So that's just like finance management that you have to do as part of being like the LLC owner.
Yeah, but I always recommend for our clients to have basically 2, and I'm not shy to say I don't get any money for it. We're using the American Express high yield savings account, and I tell them to get 2 of those. One, and then right now, by the way, they're paying about 3.5 or 4% interest, and the money is available every hour of the day. No wait, no nothing. So 2 accounts like that. One is your reserve. And every time your reserve is at that 3 roofs, $25,000 level, any money, any cash flow that comes in goes into what I call the accumulation account. That's the one that you use for your down payments for your next property. That's also the account where you're taking, and I use this for my clients, the minimum of 10% of any money that comes in from your job and direct it to that account. Right? So 10% of income plus your 15% of your rent income go into that account. And every time you get anywhere close to 30, 40,000, you can buy the next house. Right. And if you have a big incident, like you just described, 15,000 for air conditioning would be unusual. But let's say it's two roofs flew away for some reason. Then you basically replenish out of rent and still paying the 10% into your accumulation account. It just slows down the point in time when you can buy your next property.
Yeah. You mentioned sometimes the property management companies don't perform well. How often does that happen? And when it happens, how painful is it to find a replacement?
It only happened once. And the lucky thing, I'm going to tell you the story. I can't say this is generalizable for any other case, but in our case, I had gotten to know their director of sales of the turnkey provider, who originally came from a property management background and got hired into this turnkey provider company as the director of sales. I bought 5 properties from him. And then a couple of years later, he notified me and said, "Hey, Axel, I just wanted to let you know I've decided to go out on my own." And okay. And then another year later, I said, "Hey, Eric, how are you doing? What are you doing these days?" And he said, "I went back to the roots. I started my own property management company." So when the turnkey property management company didn't meet my expectations and the one of some of my clients anymore, I called him up and said, "Hey, Eric, you want a whole bunch of houses under management real quick?" He was a little hesitant because I think we had like 38 or something like that, right, all at once. But he ultimately took him. So this was very fortunate that I knew him already and I knew what kind of a person he is. The thing that was obviously painful was first getting that many houses transferred in basically more or less 6 weeks. And the other thing that was painful is that, and I'm saying this as a cautious tale or warning for anybody listening to us, I found out after the fact that we waited too long. There were indications, especially in communications and stuff like that, where we should have said, this is not right. We should actually do something about it. But we gave them the benefit of the doubt because the 4 or 5 years before, they were always working okay. So I just thought, well, maybe they have a bad month, or maybe they have some turnover in their personnel or something like that. And the reason I'm saying this is because then when Eric took over and he went obviously through every property to establish a baseline, there were a lot of them that were not managed properly, or the tenants didn't really have all the information, or the tenants said that they had already notified property management multiple times for the same thing and nobody ever showed up, that kind of stuff, right? So that depleted, in my case, my reserves quite a bit, not for $15,000 things, but 200 here and 500 there and 900 there and 1,000 there to get it all kind of organized again.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems painful. You brought up an interesting point. Like the tenants complained to the property management company and they didn't do anything about it. Is there a way ever like for tenants to ever contact the owner, like yourself directly, if the property management is not performing? Because then you kind of like are in the feedback loop. Because right now you're like, oh, don't ever bother me, right?
Well, it's not an official offer that exists. That would be the short answer. One thing that we have instituted is that we're asking property management, and it's not the same exactly for each one, but we're asking property management to inspect the houses and write a report. And so, inspection report, how did it look, take pictures. And there are a few questions that I ask them to ask the tenants. Right. And one of the questions is, how happy are you with the owner and how happy are you with the communication? Now, theoretically, they could fake it, right?
Yeah.
But I found one thing that you cannot really prepare for, at least I haven't found a good way, is a trusting relationship or a non-trusting relationship. Yes, I'm a big fan of trust but verify. And still, there comes a point where you have to say, okay, can we trust the people we're working with? Right. So if you make the assumption that they go and inspect the property, take pictures, speak to the tenant, and the tenant says, "Hey, I've been saying," and keep in mind, the people who do the inspection are not the people that would normally go out to fix it. Right. So the one is more like an administrative tenant care function, and the other one is whoever is scheduling the construction department to go and fix any kind of complaints.
Yeah.
I would say now that I've been doing it for such a long time, this is part of why it is hard when Abi starts his first turnkey company, because scale obviously makes a big difference, right?
Yeah.
For like in my Idaho, they have 1,200 properties. That lady is an employee that goes and inspect. That's all she does every day, inspect properties. What reason should she have to fake every inspection report? Right? I mean,
Yeah.
at certain scale, you do your job to the best of your ability, and somebody else is receiving the report besides me, right? And I expect that person to see if there are certain trends about communication or about engagement or time that it takes to fix something and those kind of things. Part of the reason, by the way, is not that I invented those inspections, but because these larger turnkey providers, they want to actually know what they can do to improve the quality of their service.
Yeah.
Right? And
So
I mean,
these,
certain things, just to give you an example, in the Ohio cluster, what they came up with is once a year to do something special for the tenant, but also benefiting the owners. So they come to me and say, okay, we found a company in town that is going to take care of all our 400 properties to clean the gutters before in the spring and in the fall. And it costs $60 per house. That would be just the appearance fee would normally be $60, right? So why? Because they get 400 houses to do under contract twice a year. Well, obviously I sign up for that. But the tenants would know, okay, this is nice. Nobody has to get on a ladder and clean the gutters and stuff when the rainy season starts.
yeah. You mentioned they are separate departments, but they still report. It's the still same parent company, right?
Yeah. So one of the questions when I do this interview is I ask them, describe to me the weekly meeting that you have between your director of property management, your director of the real estate part, and the director of construction, or whatever titles you give them. What's the conversation about? What is happening? Right. And then I listen to what they tell me. And if they tell me everything is like kumbaya, I ask them, how often does it happen that the property management person is disappointed about the construction quality? If they say never, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
There is no house that I've ever
Yeah.
seen that never has any things where they could have done it better when they built it or when they renovated it.
Yeah. Do you ever visit properties beforehand, or you everything you buy remotely?
I used to visit every property. I used to also recommend for all our clients to visit the properties that they plan to buy or interested to buy. Nowadays, it's kind of funny. I don't know if you heard about it, but now you can hire that out.
Like, as in, hire someone to check out the property and prepare a report, kind of thing.
Yeah, and do the video and the walkthrough and everything for you. And they are typically local. So, you give them, I don't know, $150. That is half of what a plane ticket cost.
Yeah.
Or less than half. So yeah, and they do it. They fly a drone. They look at where the trees are. They give you a picture of the surroundings. They give you a whole report. They do a video with a walkthrough. They obviously know all the places to look for. For an older house or a newer house and all those kind of things. So yeah, it used to be. And I'm not saying you should do it to save money. I still think, especially when you're early in your portfolio development, you should do it. The issue that we're facing these days is um, that you most of the time have more than one house under consideration. You may even have more than one location under consideration, right? And so this becomes then an additional expense before you even invested or made any money. If you say, well, I don't know if I'm going to go to Boise, Idaho, or to Columbus, Ohio, or to Birmingham, Alabama. I have three houses that are all kind of the same. I want to see, then you have to do 3 trips that can, add up to, I don't know, $5,000-6,000 or something like that. When you could get the information without touching it personally for maybe 500-600, 10%.
Yeah. But you still won't like get the character or the feel of the neighborhood, right? Like, how would you like, oh, I don't feel safe in this neighborhood, even though you're not living there? Is that something you consider, or you think it doesn't matter?
While you might be surprised, I have found that that is typically detrimental. And not the fact how you feel is detrimental, but the aspect that is somewhat detrimental. Keep in mind, I'm trying to mentor people to really become a self-confident business owner in the business of investing. And one of the things that is counter to that is when you let your own emotions start driving your decision making, right? The fact of me or you feeling safe is pretty irrelevant if you don't live there, right? The fact I had that actually, I had a client who wanted to start a cluster in Ohio. And so I showed her where we are. I showed her everything about the turnkey provider we're working with and so forth and so forth. And ultimately, I showed her a whole list of properties because she thought she could buy 2, maybe even 3. She had a big windfall from a sale of a house in LA. Los Angeles, I need to say, not Lower Alabama. So, and I showed her the houses and we had meetings, and I had by then already taught her how to analyze the deal and stuff like that. And we gotten kind of to the point to decide, should we go under contract or not? And she says, Axel, I have to pause here. I just can't see myself owning these houses. And I said, why not? I mean, have you looked at the numbers? And this was well before it was as challenging as it is now. She said, yeah, but they're all ugly. And I'm like, yeah, but you're not living there. You just own them. You don't have to see them other than now, ever again, so to speak. Yeah, but I can't. I can't get myself over this. If I want to buy something and own something, I need to like it. Right? So that happens. And if you go there and you start looking, do you like it? How far is it to go shopping? How far is it to the city? What's the commute? Where's the school? What are the parks? It increases all these emotional effects. And I'm not saying they are not valid. I'm just saying when you are still learning how to be a confident business owner as an investor, this introduces stuff that is something you want to be aware of, but it shouldn't be the driver of your decision.
Yeah, makes sense. So tell me about your portfolio. I don't think we discussed that. Like how many units do you have? How many properties in your own
like I said, I
portfolio?
have 10 right now. I have 4 in Idaho. I have 4 in Ohio. I have 1 in Alabama and 1 in California where we live.
Okay. So what's and these properties are all being managed by turnkey providers?
Yes.
What's the worst thing that has happened in all the years? And how long have you been have had these properties?
Most, except for 1, I had them since 2018, 19.
Okay. So like 8 years.
Yeah.
What's the worst thing that has happened? Like dealing with these property management companies or repair bills, so that people have an idea, because a lot of people in their head think like, oh, something could go wrong. So based on just your experience, what's the worst thing that has happened?
Yeah, the worst thing I would say that has happened was we had a tenant in a property. That tenant had paid on time for 14 months and then suddenly, unexpectedly stopped paying. And property management inquired what's going on, and the lady said, yeah, I have some issues, don't worry, I fix it next month. And then the second rent didn't come. And when they were just about ready to start eviction procedures and stuff like that, and obviously she didn't know this, I think she didn't know this, they found the keys for the property in the little key drop box that they had in next to their office. And so then they took the keys and went to the property, and there was quite a bit of damage in the property. But the thing that was the worst part is the whole house was literally floor to ceiling full with stuff. And not just stuff that you would normally have, but like office cabinets and all kinds of furniture and huge amounts of mattresses and moving boxes and so forth. So it looked on the one hand like a hoarder, and on the other hand, somebody who was in the process of moving out and got kidnapped or something like that, right? And yes, we went to the court, and yes, we got the title, and yes, we got the eviction thing and everything. But because she had dropped the keys in the box, we had no way to know where she ended up going. Yes, the court supported us, the sheriff supported us, but that whole thing was almost $20,000 of expense.
And that came out of your reserve, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the issue was obviously normally when you have somebody, even if they get evicted, they typically take the majority of their stuff. If there's a little bit of stuff left, you get a container and clean it out, and then you check what needs to be fixed and fix it and rent it again. Maybe if it really takes a long time, maybe 2 months or 3 months at the outside. This to get it back, going through the court, get it all emptied, get it all analyzed. We went obviously to the insurance company, and this is one lesson that I learned in this case, is because it was vacant, it was officially vacant, the insurance company said the deductible went up from 5,000 to 10,000, right? And so we got a little bit, but it was still a $10,000 hit on the reserve. And it took a long time. I mean, that is not including the missed rent, right? The 2 rents she didn't pay plus another 3 rents that it took. We didn't get until we had it ready again.
Yeah. And who handled all this process? Did the property management handle it, or you had to?
No, they handled it. Yeah. They even provided the report and pictures and everything for the insurance and so forth. So.
And that's part of their agreement? You didn't have to pay anything extra, right?
No, that was part of the fact that they had 40 properties under management through me, not my own only, but also all my clients, right? So they knew this was before we moved them. This is the same company. They knew that if this was, you asked me for the worst thing that has happened, that was really, really bad. And they knew if they don't help as much as they can, I would just basically take my clients and go somewhere else. Yes, we did that 2 years later anyway, but at the time they had every motivation to avoid that.
Right. No, but what I'm asking is, was it like if you did not have any more clients and it was just one property, were they still obligated to handle all of this?
No, they weren't obligated. I can't say that I wouldn't have worked with them because, that these if-then speculative scenarios. But if it were my only property with them, I don't think they would have done it. Or not all of it. I mean, they would have done some of it, but they wouldn't have done everything that they did.
Right. So if you just had one property, and obviously not all of this falls under the property management agreement, so how you would have to actually go there, or would you have hired someone to take care of this? Like, how would you
I would have hired some construction company because that's ultimately what you would have needed. I mean, I would have probably, see, this is the thing why I'm such a fan of turnkey provider, right? Even if their property management arm would have said, okay, we're only doing so much. But I would say, okay, so you don't want the revenue to fix it through your construction company. You want me really to go somewhere else if this is my only property, right? In that scenario. So number one, they would never have a chance to sell another property to me. Their construction company couldn't get the deal to fix everything up. And I would probably afterwards move to a different property management company. So they're not just losing the 8% or 9% fee of the rent. They would lose these other options too, right? So that is something that you typically don't have if you only have a property management company to deal with.
So when you actually do have to switch property management companies, can you switch anytime you want, or do you still have to like wait until the end of the lease term or something?
No, you can switch any day.
Okay. And then you just have to notify them that I've already switched?
Well, what you typically do is that you first make an agreement with the organization you're switching towards. right? And you want to have a discussion like I had with Eric to say, okay, what are the properties? Where are they? How many are we talking about? What's the status? How are they all rented or not? What issues are you aware of? All this stuff, so that the new company can make an informed decision to say, yeah, we're going to take it or we're not going to take it. And if you then say, okay, they say they take it, you want to work with them, then you sign an agreement with them first. And then you tell them, okay, so this is the organization I'm dealing with right now. Please work the transfer. This is the other thing. You will probably, I hope at least you smile about that. But now that they, like in our case, it wasn't just one property, it was more. But fundamentally, I basically hired them to deal with the other ones to transfer the properties. So I didn't have to do anything for that.
Okay, so I think I understand the business model now, like what you do, how what value you provide, and how it's set up so the clients are successful. Now the question is going a little bit higher up to your business, looking outwards, like marketing wise. What's your target avatar? Like, is this person that you're trying to mentor, are they someone who's looking for retirement, or they're just starting out their W-2 income and they want to invest passively? Tell me how you're thinking about the target avatar, or ICP, ideal customer profile.
Yeah, I mean, if I look at purely right now, I would say it's two groups. The one group is kind of like between 30 and 45 with an intention to retire as early as possible and have passive income through real estate being part of that. And then the other group is 50 and older who realize what we have done so far is probably not going to allow us to have the retirement that we want. And they want to change something, or like they have assets, they have certain amounts of money oftentimes sitting in their 401k or otherwise, and they want to invest, but they also don't want to have to do everything or as little as possible themselves. The retirement aspect is kind of sometimes the trigger, but just having a more solid, a little bit more off-hands portfolio in general that has that's inflation protected, those kind of things. That's for a little bit more mature people. That is more of a motivation.
Okay. So yeah, retirement angle is very powerful. Everyone wants to retire, right?
Yeah,
Everyone loves passive income. So that's works perfectly. So how are you acquiring customers right now? How are you acquiring clients?
Well, one of the strongest things is actually through what you and I are doing here, in a sense, is through podcasts. I would say 50% of the people have heard me somewhere in a podcast describing what we're doing and then contacting us, and oftentimes already being kind of semi-convinced they want to work with us and build a portfolio, not just because they listen to one show, but what typically happens is they hear me on one show, then they go and look up my name and find other shows and other stuff and other articles and so forth. And then sooner or later, they get to the point to say, let me schedule a call. Others are through social media, but it's less. And then, like I mentioned, a very important component, I would say 40% is referrals internally, so to speak. People who are clients who say, hey, I told my friends about this, and I think I told them what I get, and they wanted to, right? So that's 10% social media, the rest is either podcast or referral.
Yeah. When you started your own podcast, was that the goal to get more customers, or did you start it for some other reason?
That was part of the goal, because initially, and we're doing this now more as well, and I mean, we are the living example here right now. I had a friend of mine who said you should use podcasting as a marketing tool. And I asked, how do we do this? And he said, what you really want to look for is to work with people who can swap, where they have a show and you have a show, and you can basically be each other's guest. And that's how I started out. Then there came a phase where I felt, okay, it is for my audience also probably interesting to hear a few other things. Like you asked me about multifamily. some people say, well, what could I do? Can I do something more commercial? Should I have like a car wash or a laundromat or like a mobile home park or any of kind of other things that are also somewhat related to real estate? So I had for a while guess in that direction, and now it's basically back to the last year or so, where the main thing that I'm looking for is swapping with somebody who also has a show.
Hmm. When someone reaches out to you, say they are in your target avatar, 30 to 45 years old, how much capital do they need to get started with the portfolio model that you teach?
About, I would say 40,000.
40K. And that, I'm guessing that 40K, half of it would go towards down payment.
No, most of that goes towards down payment. Nowadays, to find properties that work, where the numbers work, you're getting closer and closer to 200,000 these days.
So 20% is 40K.
Yeah.
I see. But what about, I mean, they still need reserve, right?
Yeah, but you don't start with a reserve. You take 15% of the rent and build the reserve.
Unless, of course, things things go wrong from day one.
No,
Right? Which is
actually,
unlikely.
no, because see, there, turnkey investing is a little bit like an onion. We have not peeled that layer yet. One of the things that you can do with turnkey that you can rarely do in other cases is you can say, and I'm just going to give you a little bit the spiel. If you were the turnkey provider, I would say, Abi, what do you think about the quality of your construction business, your construction company? And you would say what?
Yeah, it's good.
It's good. It's excellent, actually. Okay.
Yeah.
So then I would say, hey, Abi, if I sign up with your organization and the quality of your construction business is so good, if they made a mistake when they renovated or constructed something, wouldn't it be fair that they fix it? Right.
Yeah.
So what we want to do, Abi, if you like me as a client and with my cohort of client of customers coming along, when we do a contract, we write in the contract for the first year, if something gets reported by a tenant that was most likely being touched as part of the renovation or construction, you call that a quality flaw and you fix it, right? So we get a 1-year warranty basically.
Oh, I see.
Right. And
So things
so
can go wrong in first year.
yeah, but if you have to keep in mind, we either we're buying either a brand new house or a house that it just went through a major renovation. Otherwise, we don't even buy it. Right?
Oh, I
So
see.
it's freshly renovated. Their construction division has just finished and put it on the market for us to buy. So like they're doing walls, kitchens, bathrooms, floors, electric, plumbing. I mean, pretty much everything. Oftentimes windows, roofs, and so forth. You have not really, if it's a renovated, it's not brand new, but it's severely renovated. So, if something in the normal use of a property doesn't work, it's typically because somebody didn't screw down the screw tight enough or installed something not quite or missed a seal or something like that. And in a year, I mean, I'm very aware in a year, if let's say you have $2,000 rent, right? So you have $24,000. If you take 15%, that's something like what, 3,500 or something like that in that ballpark as a reserve. That's not your 25,000, but you would then start year 2 with that in the bank, and
Yeah.
then and again, all the major systems. This is, by the way, another point of a high quality turnkey provider is that they look at any property they bring in to renovate. How are all the major systems doing? Right. And so major systems would be things like, what is the status of the roof? What's the status of the foundation? What's the water heater? What's the boiler? What's the air conditioning? All that stuff is major systems. And like the one in Alabama that I'm working with now, everything like a air conditioning that's older than 6 years gets replaced. Any roof older than 10 years gets replaced. Any water heater older than 3 years gets replaced. So all that stuff is new. And it is still under warranty. It's not even that big of a risk for the turnkey provider, because if it really were to break, these things are under warranty too, you know.
Hmm.
So the big expenses are very unlikely. And if you have your 3,500 or something like that ballpark in your reserve, the minor little things that might come up, you should be easy able to cover.
Yeah. But one thing I was thinking was that your buy box, the buying criteria is very restrictive, right? You
Yes.
want someone who is a turnkey provider who has ton of experience, they have good reviews, they have good referrals, they have x amount of houses or units already they're servicing. They also it also needs to be a newer construction or a new remodel. So it's narrowing down, right? I'm guessing there aren't like unlimited amount of turnkey providers that meet your criteria, right?
That's very true. But look at my portfolio. I started the business in 2015 and ended basically the majority of my portfolio as far as purchasing in 2019, and I have three. How many do you really need, if you ask yourself? And if I were to decide today, do I go after a new turnkey provider, or do I just add a property at one that I already know? Right, there comes a point where you really ask yourself, okay, do I just keep working with what's working?
Yeah. Are you always looking at, so you have these clusters, are you always looking at more opportunities like in and around the same cluster?
Yeah, I mean, guess who my guests are?
Right. So you're no, as in like like not from a client perspective, but just for your own personal.
Well, I'm interested, but like if I hear that there is a new area, a new, like let's say I wanted to do, well, let me put it the other way. How did I end up with the guys in Alabama? Right. I heard about them. I found a turnkey provider. I found out that they have a podcast. Then I asked them, okay, can we swap? Then I got the CEO of that organization on my show. I did the interview, all the stuff. And then over
Hmm.
time, I found out, okay, they have, as a business, decided to expand to Tennessee and Georgia.
Uh,
Right. Now, if I were to say either Georgia or Tennessee or both would be interesting new markets that I would want to go into, I would maybe have to find somebody new. But now that I know that they're expanding there anyway, I can stick with them and maybe end
hmm.
up having three clusters under the same roof in three different states.
Yeah, I see. So you're the podcasting is not just for new clients, it's also to for your own portfolio and strengthening relationships so you can increase the size of your clusters and make sure that you're vetting them, because if someone is like shady, they won't even want to come on your podcast, right?
Yeah, or as part of the podcast, I mean, you're asking me the questions today. I asked you the questions when you were on my show. By talking and interviewing and getting a feeling for who is this person, how does this person react, how much does this person understand, right? I wouldn't say that I interview a potential turnkey provider on my podcast like I would when we really want to go under contract, but when somebody that has a turnkey company comes on my podcast and we're talking, I already get a pretty good impression if this is potentially somebody I would want to do business with.
Hmm. You mentioned you have 10 properties right now in your own portfolio. If you were to say decide to get buy 10 more in the next few years, what will prevent you from doing that? Like, I'm guessing capital would be the big thing, right? That you have to make sure you get the loans. You mentioned DSCR based providers that can help with that. Any other potential challenges that you might encounter?
Well, one of the things is my age. That a lot of people are not necessarily aware of that, but you cannot get either DSCR or other mortgages infinitely. They typically right now they don't like for a loan to end much later than about 75, right? So that's obviously an issue, because in my case that means the longest possible I can get is 10 years. right? And so, that makes it really, really expensive. And there's probably no way that I could find a cash flowing property with a 10-year loan on it. So that would be one variable. The other variable I think that is important is the answer to the question of the overall why. Right? For me, the why of doing this had always two answers. Number one, I want to be financially independent and not necessarily be dependent on some kind of W-2 income or something else. My passive income out of my assets sustains me and my wife. And number two, I wanted to build something that I can turn over to my daughter and our grandson to know, even if I'm not around anymore, there is something there, a significant asset value that will sustain them no matter what. Right? And that's when I first start with a client, I always ask them or work through the process of identify what we call the time freedom number. Right? Where I would say, Abi, if you look at your expenses right now for your life, like your car, your vacations, your house, you're going out to eat, your whatever, all the things, supporting the kids and so forth, how much on average, if you were to take it all together and then average out on a monthly basis, what is that number right now? Right? And you would give me an answer, let's say 6,000 or 7,000 or whatever that number is, or 5,000. Everybody has a different number. That becomes the starting point to say, okay, so for now, let's plan on finding a way to replace that number with passive income. Right now, obviously, over time, because that doesn't happen in a year, we need to adjust the number. There's inflation and maybe your interest change and whatever. But that's the starting position. And now, let's say you had said it's $6,000, and I'm just making a quick example that we were finding only properties. I know this is currently crazy, but let's, for easy calculation, say all properties we find make $500 positive cash flow per month. Right? Then we know we need to get 12 properties to get to $6,000. Right? So that's just the starting premise on how do we know how much we need to do and what we need to do. Then I'm going to say, Abi, I don't know you that well yet, but when you get to property number 10, let's say you buy one per year, you will probably not have the first 9 properties to get the same rent like when you bought them. Right? So in reality, it's not $500. It's probably one is already $700, another one is $650, and another, and so forth. That's why you don't really need 12 or 15. You typically need 10 or 11. Now, if your number is much higher, if you say I need 10 grand a month, then you may need 15. But that's kind of like how this actually systematically comes together. What's the cash flow? What is the cash flow going to be when you actually want to reach this time freedom point? And what's the number that we're aiming for? And then ultimately you build the portfolio accordingly.
Yeah. So say the goal is 10 properties. How fast or how slow is it reasonably do you see like a reasonable timeline to get to that goal if you're aggressive versus if you're more risk averse?
Yeah, if you say I'm somebody who has $40,000 and I want to get there, how long does it take? I would say probably 10 years, and you would buy one per year. And that's the average. In reality, you would buy more towards the end of the 10 years, and maybe the first one you buy right away, or kind of right away because you have the money. Then for the second one, it may take 18 months. Then it might take 15 months. Then it might take 12 months, and then 9 months, and then 7. Because you have to keep in mind, every one of those properties is generating passive income that you're putting into your account. And I always say, if you're not willing to put 10% aside for your investment portfolio out of your regular income, you're not going to get there, right? It can't just exclusively come from your investment. You need to contribute something yourself as well. So, but assuming you take 10% of your income plus the passive income out of the properties, within 10 years, you would have those 10 properties. And that depends then how well they perform. And if you're more aggressive, let's say you're a bigger saver or you're already bringing more money to the table, the sooner you can grow the portfolio, the sooner you accelerate this kind of waterfall to get more properties per year.
So it is a get rich slow model. If someone is like young, they're aggressive, they don't have a ton of money, but they want to get to say $100,000 in monthly income, right? Is it even possible with this model, or would you like, yeah, you're not the right client for me?
100,000, I don't think is, well, it's not realistic unless you have a lot of time ahead of you. You have to keep one thing in mind that is sometimes underestimated. When I say, and we use our little example of $500 positive cash flow of those properties, that is obviously still with a mortgage on it. If you take this house that I mentioned earlier, where you pay 200,000 and you're getting 18 or 1900 rent, the fact that you get 200, 300, $400 positive cash flow is because the rest goes for property tax, insurance, interest, and principal. And most of the time, what we're finding is interest and principal is somewhere in the area of about 40%, sometimes close to 50% of the rent. So on our $2,000 or $1,900 rent, half of that goes, or almost half of that goes into paying the mortgage. Not out of our pocket, it comes obviously out of the rent. But over time, these properties are all getting to the point where the mortgage is paid. Right? There's one thing, if you're my age, what am I doing with the positive cash flow is paying extra principal on the lowest balance mortgage to get rid of it. And those properties where I had maybe $300 or $400 positive cash flow, as soon as the mortgage is paid out, it suddenly jumps to $1,500 because I only pay 9 or 10% property management and another 9 or 10% for property tax and insurance. So 80% of the property of the rent suddenly comes into my pocket, and then 80% of the next one, the next one. So if you take my portfolio and I take 10 properties, and assuming they will all have no more mortgages on it, I would make somewhere in the area of 14,000 a month.
Yeah.
Right. So that would be like what, about 150, 160,000 a year.
Yeah. Yeah. So it is, yeah, as long as you're paying off your mortgages, you're slowly building equity and getting rich, but it's not like a get rich quick thing. So it is you have to be, I'm guessing some people come to you, they do have unrealistic expectations, right? They're like, oh, I want to get to this number as fast as possible, and then you have to kind of like explain that it's not the right model.
Exactly. Well, the thing about it is, when somebody has such an aggressive expectation, what the discussion ultimately ends up being about is, what is your risk tolerance? Right? I mean, if you say, I believe Bitcoin will go to 1 million, and I want somehow to be able to take 100,000 a month or 100,000 a year, well, then invest everything in Bitcoin right now while it's at 50, 60, or 70,000, and hope that it goes to 1 million. And if you were right and you're willing to take that risk, then you can reach that goal. In real estate, you cannot have that expectation, because it just doesn't work that way. I always, if you look at the tax deductible, the appreciation, all the financing, all the leverage stuff, and so forth, if you're ending up somewhere between 15 and 20% per year on your down payment, on your money invested, that's about how much you can make. It's just, that's the way it is. And if you say, I need more, then the answer is, you have to increase risk.
Yeah, that makes sense. So going back to the original question, so when we started, your biggest constraint is one-on-one time, right? It's hard to scale, as you correctly pointed out. So how are you thinking of getting to 400K in revenue in the next 3 years?
Well, what I'm kind of envisioning is, I would like to get the business changed to have two components: the educational component and the more consultative component. The educational would be a lot of the things you and I discussed in the show today, to be online as courses that people can take, almost like a college education. And the consultative part would be on actual concrete stuff, right? Like somebody is really ready, has learned their stuff, wants to know, here's the property, here's the location. I think I have an idea of the turnkey provider. How do we do the deal? Or how can we grow the fastest? Or any of those kind of things where it's more, I engage with them based on a very well developed knowledge level, more in a sense of a problem solver or strategist, and not every single person through the whole process holding their hands.
I see. So the education side, you're thinking more like online courses, right? Where it's you create the course once and then it's all like passive. Whereas the deal specifics consultative would be more like one-on-one mentorship, right?
Yeah, but even for the deal specifics, I can teach somebody how do you evaluate, which tools do you use, how do you enter the data, do you compare them. You can do this all as part of like a course within the curriculum,
Right.
and show them some examples and show them what the red flags are and show them what they actually need for. So then, that somebody would come and say, okay, I have done 3 deals, but here this fourth one, this is kind of tricky, and there are certain things that are not really covered in your program. Can you help me?
Yeah. So yeah, the only thing I would say is we tried. So in our land business, we have an education site as well. We tried the online courses. The problem is at least in our business, the video content went outdated very fast because the tools changed and then the AI came and then you know so we had to constantly like re-record. So it was like not close to passive as we were hoping. So I think that might be one problem you might run into. Um, One thing I don't know if you have thought about this is maybe having group classes like one to many as opposed to one to one. So you have like a group of 3 or 4 people, like a cohort that starts at the same time. And then you can kind of run the like 3 month, 6 month, 9 month course. And there's part of the same cohort. So you can have multiple cohorts running at the same time. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, we're doing that right now when it goes generalized over how to deal with money, how to change your mindset, that kind of stuff. What I've tried to do it basically in a way for the same like I'm doing in the mentoring. And the issue that we run into is that people have to reveal a lot of their personal finances and stuff to really get the benefit out of it. In the one-on-one, it's not an issue because the only person they're telling is me, and I kind of have to know it, otherwise I can't really help them. But when you have all kinds of people that you otherwise don't have a relationship with, people are quite hesitant to do
Yeah.
that. And if you look at real deals and real locations for real circumstances, and why this one and not this one, and what's your expected thing, and what are you doing it for? So that's been my experience. I'm not saying it is completely impossible, but as soon as it gets specific, there seems to be a hesitation to let a lot of their personal stuff out into the open.
Yeah. I think it might be an expectations thing that you might have to set when you are describing what the cohort is, like make it part of the benefit, like not a drawback, because you'll be saying, well, you'll look at other students as well and they will disclose their personal finances so they can learn how you would act in their situation, right? Because if you just do one-on-one, you're just learning from your situation, but your situation might be different 5 years from now. So
True, yeah, that's true. I
right.
mean, what I'm seeing in our actual currently running cohort program is that I can, since I've been doing it for a while, detect when somebody is asking something without really asking the real thing, so to speak,
Yeah.
right? And what I typically say as part of the beginning of the cohort and then somewhere in the middle, if anybody has any kind of personal issues or things that you don't want to say in front of the people, here's my link. You can schedule a call with me and then we talk about it. And I can say almost all individual participants in every cohort have done that. And when I
Yeah.
ask them, like, okay, I didn't think this was such a secret that you couldn't have said it in the class. And oftentimes they said, yeah, but this is my personal stuff, and I want to keep that between the two of us.
Yeah, I feel like they're just trying to get your one-on-one time for. They might
Yeah, but they only get
find
it.
a
I mean, it's
loophole.
one time in a 3 months program, right? Like, it's not that they can do this over and over and over again. Um, and I don't know if I don't want to claim that I'm right about this or not. It's just pretty obvious to me that people hesitate to really get their stuff on the table with other people that they don't know listening.
Yeah, yeah. I think it might be. I mean, yeah. I'm just guessing now, but it might be an expectations thing where if you try to solve it as a say, well, this is a good thing, not a bad thing. It might change like a positioning thing, right? Because people will be like, well, I don't want to reveal my specific, but then you're also getting to know like five different other people's specifics, and then it's helping your understanding. So that's how
I
I
mean,
I
we
would.
can definitely try it, from the marketing to see what happens if we were to set
Yeah,
something like that up and offer that.
yeah. So okay, so you're already doing one to many. So because I thought all your mentorship was one on one, so theoretically you could just increase the class size gradually, right? So right now you're doing 1 to 5. You can
Yeah,
go up to one to.
but I think the difference is in the one-to-one, we're really talking about setting up your business, setting up your portfolio, getting actually into buying properties and all the stuff that we discussed today. In the
Hmm.
current cohort program, we're talking basically about what are the ways to improve the visibility on where your money is coming, where your money is going, what you're doing with your money, what's the mindset about money. A lot of people have this kind of scarcity mindset, or they're afraid to make investments, or they have been told after they got burned that debt is in general bad, right? So
Hmm.
where we actually tell them, okay, there is what I call good debt and bad debt, right?
Yeah.
Always clashing with Dave Ramsey. I had multiple
Yeah.
people who took Dave Ramsey's programs and then
Yeah.
were very proud that they had no debt, and they had somehow drank the Kool-Aid
Yeah.
that you could never have debt, and that kind of stuff. It's a little bit more general. It's kind of like the 101 class about
Yeah.
money
Yeah.
and mindset, right? It's not really
Yeah.
anywhere, and it's actually interesting. These cohorts, the members of these cohorts, are typically not ever becoming, at least not with us, investors.
They're not becoming investors.
No. And the reason is because they have struggled so much with money that they don't have the minimum requirement to. I mean, it makes no sense for me to do one-on-one mentoring program if somebody doesn't have a minimum amount of money to invest. Right? So they
Hmm.
take the cohort to actually get their stuff in order, but it takes probably a few years before they're actually then ready to invest.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's you're essentially doing financial education then.
Yeah, mindset management.
Yeah. How much are you charging for service like this, or there are like different tiers?
Well, the cohort program is $500 for the course, and it's 9 sessions.
$500 for the how long?
It's 9 weeks basically.
9 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that's not super expensive. So it should you should yeah. I mean
Yeah, I mean, we tried different numbers over the last year and a half since we've been offering this, and we started higher and we had nobody, and then we asked people that had originally shown interest, and they said, "Yeah, I just can't afford $1,000 right now."
hmm,
And only then at the end, when we did the lower price, at the end, people actually report the successes. Like the biggest one that I'm super proud of was last time in the fall of 25. We had somebody who basically said, no matter what I do, at the end, I always have $300 in my bank account. And we went through the class, and then at the end of the class, she says, I still can't believe it. Number one, I paid off my first credit card, and I'm on the way to pay off the second one June next year. And I got contracts with clients where they pay me more than I thought I could ever ask for. That was in 9 weeks.
hmm,
Now, could she ultimately become an investor? Probably, right? But it's
hmm.
a different thing that we are accomplishing there. than somebody who has 40, 50,000 and is just trying to get into real estate.
So you almost never get those kind of people who have like 50K saved up.
Oh yeah, we have them, but they come from either referrals or from podcasts. They don't come out of the cohort.
Oh, I see. So this is just for the people who are signing up for cohorts.
Yeah.
Okay. So the people who actually have 50K saved up, they are buying your one-on-one time?
Yes.
Okay. And how much do you charge for that?
That's $6,000.
6,000?
Yes.
For
the mentoring program, for the basically 24 sessions.
Oh, 24 sessions. And is this bi-weekly?
In theory. In reality, it's never really that stringent, because some people have a little bit more time in the spring or less time in this and so forth. So I'm trying to be reasonably flexible to their time availability. That is also, I had one person who almost took a year and a half because she was so busy that, we only had every 3 weeks or so.
So is it easy for you to get this high ticket client as opposed to the $500 client?
No, I wouldn't call it easy. If you have some way to say I sent you more, then please do.
No, as in like from a messaging perspective, are these all coming from podcasts and referrals, or
exactly. Yeah, we're not
channel?
messaging. There's basically no marketing or advertising for the cohort thing. Every time we put it out, we get interest and then we run it.
Oh, I see. Okay, so it's on demand.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I think we're getting to the point where people are waiting, when is the next time, we do it once in spring and once in fall. And it's in a limited capacity. We put it in our newsletter and a few articles on Substack, and then the people are always from Substack. So
yeah, okay. So these are like existing email list and Substack list.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit, you might say it's a little bit like a public service. You can't make it free because then it's not valued, but a little bit.
Yeah.
Like that, so.
Yeah. No, I think Axel, as we land this plane, I did wanted to say that it's, it is a very interesting business model. So thanks for, sharing it with us, spending time with us. If someone's watching this and, they like what they heard, they want to work with you, they want to join your cohort, maybe they want to do one-on-one, what's the best place for them to reach out?
Yeah, the best way is to go to ideawealthgrower.com, and then when you land on the homepage, at the top right-hand corner of the homepage, there's a button that says Discovery Call. You just click on that, you get on my calendar, and then we talk. I mean, you can also put Idea Wealth Grower or my name on Google or whatever, and it pops up all over the place. But if you really wanted to get something scheduled, that's the easiest way.
Yeah. Axel, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Yeah, Abi, thank you so much.